Well, it's the Saturday before Easter, and I'm hosting Easter at our house, and I decided to buy a brisket. So I ran to Costco yesterday, picked up a 16-pound brisket. I think it was about $3.99 a pound, so about $65. I'm feeding about 20 to 25 guests, so you know, $2.50, $3 a person isn't bad for a meat dish. I come from a very large family, so I pretty much prepare the meat and a couple sides, and then everybody else brings everything else. So it's a fun time, and I look forward to these types of gatherings. And I don't think I've ever done a brisket before, and I know my YouTubers have been asking for brisket videos, so here it is. Basically, I pulled it out of the refrigerator. This is earlier in the morning on Saturday, and I basically trimmed it up. You can look at all kinds of videos on the internet how to trim it up, but I basically I'll cover that in another video, really, when it's a little slower. You can see the pile of trimmings that I got from the fat. I simply just trim the meat off. I freeze the meat and then use it in something else, like fajitas or something else along the other down the line. Now the fat, I'll actually use that in the cook. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. I think I prepped the brisket around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I basically took all the fat off, salt, pepper, garlic pepper. That's all I put on it, and I put it back in the refrigerator. So it's been in the refrigerator for about 12 hours, 14 hours. It's about 9:30 at night here, so it's a beautiful night to actually cook. It's about 60, maybe 57 degrees, so almost perfect, no wind. Clear as day out. I guess if you can call it clear as day at night, but anyways, you know what I mean. So I basically pulled out the smoker, put the log, cleaned it out, put the logs in, got it about 250, 275, and I pulled the meat out when I started to warm up the smoker, just to kind of let it warm up to room temperature as much as possible. And here I am bringing it out. I put the fat in that pan to the right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make beef tallow out of that. So beef tallow is basically liquid fat from the fat trimmings. So I'll cook the fat just as long as the brisket. People don't realize how long it takes to cook brisket sometimes. It's definitely a love, but it's well worth it in the end if it comes out well. So I put this thing on about 10:15 or so, 10:10 I think it was, and here we are at 11 o'clock. So really the first 50 minutes it's been on. I don't normally like to pop the lid before 3 hours on the smoker, but I forgot to put the probes in the meat to get the temperature. Now I've got two probes in the meat. I got one in the thick end, which is the point. I got one in the skinny end, which is the flat, and then I also have one on the grill grate. So I've got 3 different temperatures. I think I'm using a something bird. I can't remember, a thermometer. It's Wi-Fi. So sorry, it's Wi-Fi. So that means anywhere in the world I can actually monitor the temperature of the smoker, which is nice. If you ever get a thermometer, a wireless thermometer, always make it Bluetooth. Wi-Fi, not Bluetooth, because Bluetooth you can't leave your house. Wi-Fi you can go anywhere. Obviously I've got the probes in now. I've got to stoke this fire about every hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So you can see I always put 3 pieces in. I basically spread out the coals, and I put 3 pieces of wood on, 2 flat and then 1 diagonal across the 2 flats. And then you saw just a few minutes ago, I guess a few seconds ago, you saw me put like 3 pieces of wood on top of the firebox. So what that does, that actually helps dry out the wood, not as much as warm it up. So the whole point is to get the temperature of the wood up, so when you do put it on the coals, it actually ignites faster. So a cold piece of wood takes a lot longer than a warm piece of wood to start on fire. The reason why you want it to start on fire, because when it's not on fire, it creates a lot of nasty smoke, like a white gray smoke, which is not smoke that you really want on your meat. It doesn't hurt it too much as long as it's not long term, but you don't want that type of smoke on your meat very long. So when you warm up the wood before you put it on the fire, the white smoke, the dirty smoke, is limited for the most part. Now what you also saw me do there, and you'll see it throughout all the different checks I made, is I add fat trimmings to the fire. A couple reasons for that. One, it helps get the fire roaring, but especially when it gets too low and maybe I've neglected it or something like that, it definitely gets the fire going back pretty good. But another thing is too, it's all waste. It would be in the trash can if I wasn't burning it. And I think there's some value when it comes to the smell or the odor that it puts off when it's on the fire, on the meat itself. The two things I've done recently with the brisket, and I've learned this stuff off YouTube and others, is I've added beef tallow to the recipe, and I'll show you how I use that later on. I've already showed you what I'm doing to make it. But then also throwing the fat on the fire. I think the combination of those two things actually help the flavor of the brisket. So like I said, it's 2 a.m. Not too many people are out cooking, smoking at 2 a.m. in the morning. And about every hour to 45 minutes, I'm constantly up. And the reason why I'm up is not necessarily to check the meat. The meat's fine in the chamber. It gets a little dry, and I'll spritz it with a 50-50 mix of water and apple cider vinegar. But the main reason why I'm getting up every 45 minutes to an hour is to put more firewood on the fire. You can see that moon up there. You can see that smoke roaring. The smoker's really settled in. Since I bought it a year ago, it's really consistent, and it's not as dramatically changing temperatures like it used to when I first bought it. Here we are at 245. You can see what I'm doing. I'm basically, spreading out the hot coals, and then I'm adding the 3 pieces of wood, 2 flat, 1 diagonal, that I took off the top of the firebox. You can see how fast to the right it lit up. Now the problem with right now in the middle of the night is it's pretty dark, so I have to use my cell phone to actually see. Now hopefully when I get the smokehouse up, I'll have lights inside there and a couch where I can sleep, and then also be able to see the meat. Now I noticed that the temperature on the flat was about 8-7 degrees warmer than the point. The point was away from the fire. The flat was the closest to the fire. Well, the flat's the smallest part of the brisket, and the point's the biggest part. So I simply just rotated the brisket. I've got the bigger part towards the fire now to catch it up. I got the smaller point away from the fire, so the grill, obviously the grill is hotter towards the firebox than it is towards the smokestack. So I made that switch. Now the reason why I don't do that in the beginning is simply because smoke goes up and over and doesn't go back down. It goes up, over, out the smokestack. So if I had the point in the beginning next to the coals or next to the firebox, the back end of the brisket, which is the small part, wouldn't see any smoke, so it wouldn't get the color I'm looking for, or what they call the bark. So I've learned my lesson on that, so I always start with the point away from the fire, the flat towards the fire, so I can get a good bark. And then once I notice the difference in the temperature, I make the rotation, and by then I have pretty good color on the pieces of meat. I don't know what time it is right now. It's early, but once again, same routine with the firebox. Sometimes I put the wood on first, sometimes I put the wood on second. I check the meat, then put the wood on. Yeah, I don't know. There's no rhythm to it. A lot of times I'll even forget to put the wood on top, which is a pain because then it takes longer for the wood to ignite in the firebox when I need it. So these are my sleeping quarters when I do brisket. I don't like to bother my wife and family for the most part. Definitely the wife. She would have a canary if she heard my alarm going off every 45 minutes. So I just chill on the couch. I watch TV. Well, I don't watch TV. The TV's just on making noise. Luckily, I fall asleep extremely quick. So you saw me set my 45-minute alarm on my phone, and out I go. 45 minutes. It's now 4:30 in the morning. I'm out on my 7th check on this brisket. First thing I do is walk out the door, and I take the logs off the firebox, and I put them inside the firebox. I'm simply looking at color. After about 3 or 4 hours, the brisket starts to get dry, so I automatically always spritz after the third hour. So every time I check, I always spritz. You gotta watch for pooling. If you do have pooling on top of your brisket, it won't give you the color you're looking for. You can see the temperature is looking pretty good right now. A lot of times I'll put a board, or I guess a little mini log underneath the brisket to kind of bow it, so the water and fluids can come off the top of it, so the color can remain good. Now you saw the temperatures, they're real close. They're in the 170s. I would normally wrap right now, but the problem is I didn't have the color I wanted. This brisket's cooking pretty quick, and I'm running right around 250 to 300 at all times. Didn't really get under 250 too much. So the 8 check, 5:30 a.m. I am wore out. It gets old, but luckily I fall asleep very quick, so it makes it a little easier knowing that I can get a solid 45 minutes, but it's rough. It wears me out. One of the best things about this cook is that its temperature is beautiful outside. It's not cold, it's not windy, it's gorgeous out. So I'm a morning person, so at this particular point of the day, I'm feeling okay, I guess. But I know the finish line is close, and I'm trying to finish this out so my family can be happy in about 15 hours. So once again, spreading out the coals, putting in 3 pieces of wood. You saw how fast that piece of wood lit because it was so warm. I've got a pile over there, so I think I figured out it took me about 30 pieces of wood. So 30 pieces of wood, which I call splits, are about 3 pieces of one log that you would use for a fireplace. So I used about 10 pieces of firewood is what I used for this cook. 6:15. Here's the 9th check, and I think it's my final outdoor check. So 6:15 a.m. got it on there about 10:15. So I'm about 8 hours in, which is pretty quick for a brisket. 16 pounds. I figured I had to go at least 10 on the smoker. I'm going to tell you why this is good news here in a second, but I simply look at the color and I feel the fat on top of it. Now, I have fat side up, so usually I like to touch the fat and make sure it's, squishes in. My finger squishes in real well. And once it squishes in, I know that fat on top's kind of turned to jello. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for color. And then once I get those 2 things, then I verify with temperature. Temperature anywhere around 175 and up is usually a good thing. But I think I make a determination right here and then that, hey, it's time to get this thing off. Yeah, here we go. So I'm at 188 in the flat. I'm 182 in the point. So the point's still 6 degrees behind. There's my beef tallow. So you see it started out as fat. Now look at it. There's a lot of liquid in that pan. I'm going to use that here in a minute. I'll make sure I explain how I use that. I think I did in my other brisket video. We take a peek at that. I did briskets and ribs together, and there's something. I think it was ribs. I can't remember, but I have used beef tallow before. It's free. It comes with the brisket. You trim all that fat off and you get something out of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically disconnecting the probes from the thermometer, and I'm going to leave those probes in place so when I move it inside to finish the cook, nothing changes with the brisket at all. I'm also unloading the tallow at the same time, pretty much shutting down the grill. I won't put any more wood on. I'll pop the firebox open, let the thing get full of oxygen, and kind of just let it burn itself out. Okay, the reason why I was pretty excited there was because when I get ready to wrap this brisket, you can see I'm laying out butcher paper. I get this butcher paper on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. I think you can get it at the local stores too. I think Reynolds actually sells it now, but I got a humongous box of it on Amazon for a pretty good price. Can't remember the price, but I'll put the link in the description. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically placing the brisket on the paper, 2 sheets, and then I'm using that beef tallow. I'm pouring it over the top of the brisket and then also some on the paper. And then I'm simply going to wrap this brisket as tight as possible to make like a vacuum inside that paper. Just helps it cook a little better, keeps the moisture inside. And what I'm going to do, instead of putting it back on the smoker, I'm going to place it in the oven. Now you're thinking oven, right? I'm not making cookies, I know. But this is the deal. When you wrap it, you're not getting any smoke. So why waste my wood, my time, and my effort keeping my smoker up to par at a perfect temperature as best as I can when I'm not benefiting from anything but the heat? So I simply put it in the oven. I put the oven on 250 and I let it cook until the desired temperature. That desired temperature is around 201, 202. You can see both temperatures, the both point and flat, both came very close together. Within a degree, it caught up. And this is my 10th check at 8:05 a.m. on Easter Day. So this thing's been cooking for about, altogether cooking for about 10 hours. Not bad. Some briskets will 15 hours, so it was a win-win. And this is why I did it. Here it is, 4:30 p.m. Easter night, or Easter evening, and I have a big family, and they're all over to enjoy this piece of meat that I cooked. And this is why you do it. You do it to make everybody happy. And of course, the wine of choice is a Cab Sauv from Cooper's Hawk. I'll put that in the description too. It's a phenomenal bottle of wine. We put a pretty good hurt on that bottle. It's a nice dry red. It goes great with brisket. So here I am slicing the brisket. Like I said, when I got done at 8 o'clock in the morning, it actually sat in the oven for 8 hours. I did put the oven on warm about 1 o'clock, but the brisket never got below 150 internally, so it's still food safe, and it just sat there and rested. And you can see the results I got out of it as I pull a piece out of the middle. A good sign is when you cut the brisket and the fat on top, the bark doesn't separate. Yeah, about perfect. Smoke ring was good, tenderness was great, and of course the juices, second to none. It was a great piece of meat. If you want a good brisket for a decent price, Costco Prime Brisket. Don't do choice. I've had choices at Walmart. They suck. The Prime Brisket at Costco is the way to go. I believe Sam's has something similar, but Sam's is Walmart, and the Costco, or the choice brisket from Walmart wasn't very good. You can see the juices just come out of this thing. It's just a gorgeous piece of meat. Really happy with it. It was a great brisket, probably the best brisket I ever cooked. I think it's my 4th or 5th one. This one and my 2nd one were clearly the best. The 2nd one actually was on a 4-H cow. But these Costco briskets, I can't say enough about them. Of course, fingers got the old lick in there. I try to keep things clean by washing my hands at all times. But for the most part, that's the beauty of being the cook of a brisket. You get to cheat a little bit. And you can see my family members are like hawks around this thing. My brother, Lake Warrior, check out his channel. It's pretty solid. He swiped that piece of brisket off of the beginning of it before I even started to cut it. Here's my other brother trying to tell me how to cut it. He's trying to get a piece of it. And I think my son sneaks over here in a minute and grabs a piece too. So it's funny how everybody's your best friend when you start carving the meat up on Easter or Christmas Day. Here's the point. You actually rotate it, cut it a different direction. You know, there's lots of videos on YouTube on how to cut brisket, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to do. You really can't screw it up. It's a great piece of meat. Now this fed 24 people, and then we still had leftovers for 3 or 4 days afterwards, so plenty of meat. It's a great choice. It's just the effort you have to put into it to get it there on the day you're trying to present it. Most people don't know how much time and effort you put in, but at the end of the day, when they all say this is great meat, it makes it all worth it. I think I went to bed at like 7:30 this night, so I was pretty tired. Yeah, here comes the boy. He's gonna sneak my piece, I think, right here. He's hawking it right now, coming in for the kill. I think here in a second. He's trying his hardest to sneak in there. Oh yeah, here he comes. I think I actually told him to get a piece, so he just snuck in and got a couple of pieces here and there. But it's hard not to resist eating this. And then at 5:04 p.m. on Easter Day, here's the family all gathering, having a good time, enjoying food, like most families do on Easter Day and Christmas Day and all the other major holidays. Well, if you could, please subscribe, like, share with your friends and family. And like I always say, appreciate you spending time with the Home Pro Hero.